Hello and welcome to today's installment of the Daf Yomi using Menachot edition, Tractate Masechet 38 Omadei. So just carrying on from the previous Daf, the last line, the Gemara answers. Targuma Rav Bar Shaba Kamei de Rav Kahana. The Gemara answers, Rav Bar Shaba interpreted that statement before Rav Kahana. He stated this with regard to the prohibition of you shall not deviate to the left or to the right of that which they tell you, in Deuteronomy 17:11. A prohibition by rabbinic law is overridden by human dignity, but not a prohibition by Torah law. Therefore, Ma Rav Bar Rav Ashi would have removed his garment had he known about the tear. And there are those who say that there is a different version of this discussion. It was when they were there, in a place where the corner of Ma Bar Rav Ashi's garment tore, that Ravina said to him that it had torn. And Ma Bar Rav Ashi said to him in response, what is your opinion? Do you think that I should throw the garment off? And then the master says, great human dignity, as it overrides the prohibition of the Torah. The Gemara raises a difficulty, but Rav Bar Shaba interpreted that statement for Rav Kahana. He stated this with regard to the prohibition of you shall not deviate. Not a prohibition against carrying in the public domain, which applies by Torah law. One answers that here too, it is not a prohibition by Torah law, as the place where they were walking is not a full-fledged public domain, but a carmelit, in which carrying is prohibited by rabbinic law. So let's explain that a bit more. Hachanami carmelit d'Rabbanan hi. By Torah law, there are two domains of the God to which one may not move items from one to the other on Shabbat: the public domain and the private domain. Likewise, it is prohibited to carry an item 4 cubits in the public domain. Both these domains are precisely defined. The sages established that any place which is not traversed by the public and yet is not a private domain either, and considered a separate domain called a carmelit, it is prohibited by rabbinic law to move articles to or from a public or private domain to this domain, nor may one carry in this domain itself. One who is walking in the public domain on Shabbat and becomes aware that the ritual fringes of the garment he is wearing have become unfit, must remove the garment even if he would be left naked. The reason is that human dignity does not override a prohibition that is by Torah law. With regard to the definition of a public domain, see Shulchan Aruch or Chaim 345:7. If he is in a carmelit when he discovers that it has become unfit, he need not remove the garment until he reaches his house. Well, human dignity overrides a prohibition that is by rabbinic law. The more right that it only applies on Shabbat, was prohibited to prepare ritual fringes, and therefore he is not considered to be neglecting the part of mitzvah ritual fringes. And a weekday, by contrast, is prohibited to continue wearing the garment, and he would thereby be neglecting the performance of the part of mitzvah. Shulchan Aruch or Chaim 13:3, and see the Mishnah Berurah there. And this is a summary to Perek 3. The first and main section of this chapter addressed a number of issues concerning the validity of a meal offering whose rites were not performed in the proper manner, and his actions and the actions that are indispensable to its sacrifice. Continuing the discussion of the previous chapter with regard to pickle, the Gemara stated that intent to eat or burn a meal offering beyond its designated time disqualifies the offering only if the intent to eat referred to an item whose typical manner is such that one does not partake of it, e.g. the remainder of the meal offering, or if the intent to burn referred to an item whose typical manner is such that one does burn it on the altar, e.g. the handful of or the frankincense. This intent has no effect if it was intent to burn an item fit for consumption or to eat that which is supposed to be burned, despite the fact that the burning on the altar is also called consumption. Furthermore, intentions with regard to quantities one intends to eat and burn improperly do not combine to equal in olive bulk the minimum volume to incur liability. The chapter then addressed the question of which rites of a meal offering is indispensable to the sacrifice. With regard to the mixing the oil, with regard to the mixing of the flour in oil, the breaking into pieces, in the case of those meal offerings which require breaking into pieces and bringing of the offering to the altar, all these are not indispensable. Conversely, the pouring of oil on the meal offering and its salting before burning, in addition to the rite of the handful itself, are removing the handful, placing the handful in a vessel, conveying the handful to the altar, and burning the handful are all indispensable. In sum, if a requirement is repeated in the Torah, or if a term of emphasis was stated with regard to it, e.g. the word statute, it is indispensable to the sacrifice. In relation to the above, the chapter discussed at length the issue of salting offerings. This includes the question of which offerings require salting, how they are salted, and when it is permitted for a priest to use the salt in the temple for the purpose of eating the offerings. With regard to the case of mixtures and meal offerings, the Gemara states some novel halachot that apply to mixtures in general, particularly with regard to the definition of the concept of a substance in contact with the same type of substance and a substance in contact with a different type of substance. As far as meal offerings are concerned, the conclusion is that in the case of a mixture of items that are sacrificed in the altar, the different components of the mixture do not nullify one another. Consequently, if handfuls of meal offerings became intermingled, or intermingled with meal offerings that are entirely burned, the whole mixture should be sacrificed upon the altar. Furthermore, if a handful became intermingled with the remainder of a meal offering, which is not sacrificed in the altar, it is permitted to burn its mixture, but if one nevertheless sacrificed it, the owner has fulfilled his obligation. In a case of two meal offerings that became intermingled, if one cannot remove a separate handful from each, they are fit, but if not, they are unfit. One may not consecrate a meal offering in two separate vessels, rather the meal offering must be joined together. Apropos this ruling, the Gemara discussed at length the halach of a vessel that combines all of its contents with regard to sacrificial matters, despite the fact that the various parts are not in contact with one another. On the topic of ritual impurity, the Gemara stated that if a handful contracted ritual impurity, it is not permitted to sacrifice it, but if one nevertheless sacrificed it, the owner of the meal offering has fulfilled its obligation. The reason is that the front plate worn by the high priest affects acceptance of the meal offering. Despite this, if one intentionally rendered the handful impure, he is prohibited the remainder in the consumption. If the entire remainder contracted its impurity, if it was burned or lost, one may not sacrifice the handful, as the right of the handful depends on the existence of the remainder. Some say that in a case where the remainder became impure, the front plate will acceptance after the fact. If part of the remainder remains and is valid, one sacrifices the handful ab initio. Another halacha established in this chapter is that a meal offering must first be placed in a vessel before the handful is removed, and likewise the handful must be placed in a service vessel, and one must sacrifice it in a service vessel. All these requirements are indispensable. It is permitted for the priest to eat the remainder of the meal offering from the time the fire of the altar takes hold of the majority of the handful. In the second section of the chapter, it is stated that the various portions of meal offering, i.e. a tenth of an eighth of flour, a handful, and the frankincense, invalidate the meal offering if part of one of the elements is lacking, even if most of it is present, and likewise the absence of any of them prevents fulfillment of the mitzvah with the others. In sense of this halacha, the Gemara listed several cases involving offerings and other mitzvot that consist of different parts, either various items or multiple actions, where each of these parts is indispensable to the fulfillment of the mitzvah as a whole. In this context, the candelabrum in the temple was discussed at length with regard to both the matters that are indispensable for its construction as well as its form and its various components. The mitzvah of mezuzah and phylacteries were also analyzed in the chapter. This is the most comprehensive discussion of these halachas in the Talmud, as there is no tractate devoted to the details of these mitzvot except for minor tractates that are not part of the Mishnah and for which there is no Gemara. The issues discussed in this context were halachot of the Torah passages included in the mezuzah and phylacteries, and the manner of their writing and the appropriate method for preparing them. Now read an introduction to Parak 4. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and command them that they prepare for themselves throughout the generations strings on the corner of their garments, and they shall put on the fringe of the corner of a sky blue thread, and it shall be to you for a fringe, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, and that you go not about after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you used to go astray, that you may remember and do all my mitzvot, and be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God." Numbers 15:37-41. You shall not wear diverse kinds, wool and linen together. You shall prepare for yourself twisted cords upon the four corners of your covering with which you cover yourself. Deuteronomy 22:11-12. This is the offering of Aaron and his sons, which they shall offer to the Lord in the day when he is anointed. The 10th part of an eighth of fine flour for meal offering perpetually, half of it in the morning and half in the evening. On a griddle it shall be made with oil. When it is soaked, you shall bring it in broken pieces. You shall offer the meal offering for a pleasing aroma to the Lord, and the anointed priest that shall be in his stead from among his sons shall offer it into statute forever, and it shall be wholly made to smoke to the Lord. In Leviticus 6:13-15, this chapter, like the one that precedes it, includes a compilation of halacha pertaining to mitzvot that have multiple components. Chapter 4 focuses on components of mitzvot that can function independently, such as the lack of one component does not prevent the fulfillment of the mitzvah with another component. The beginning of the chapter deals with the white and sky blue strings of ritual fringes and the phylacteries worn on the arm and head. It goes on to discuss the relationship between offering sacrifice on the same day, such as the daily offering and the additional offerings. Similarly, discuss the relationship between various additional offerings themselves. It addresses the 2 loaves, and the communal offering on Shavuot of 2 loaves from the new wheat, and the communal peace offerings of 2 sheep that accompany the 2 loaves on Shavuot. These loaves and sheep are separate from the additional offering sacrificed on Shavuot as on other festivals. There's also a similar discussion concerning offerings that are sacrificed in 2 halves, split between the morning and the afternoon, such as the daily offerings and the incense. All the 2 halves considered 2 components of one mitzvah or 2 independent mitzvot. This leads to a tangential in the discussion of the griddle cake offering of the high priest, and to also sacrifice half in the morning and half in the afternoon. So let's dive straight in. Hatcheles eina ma'akeves es halavon, v'halavon eina ma'akev es techeles. Tefillah shel rosh eina ma'akeves es shel rosh, v'shel rosh eina ma'akeves shel yad. The absence of the sky blue techelet. So let's explain techelet. Techelet is mentioned numerous times in the Bible and by the sages. It is not the name for a particular color, as in modern Hebrew usage, but rather refers to wool dyed with a particular substance. Based upon references in the Bible, statements of the sages and other sources, it's clear that techelet was a rare commodity used primarily as a dye for the clothing of royalty and other extremely prominent individuals. This dye was prepared from a species known as chilazon, C44b, and it was produced mostly in the tribal territory of the Vulin, along the northern coast of Eretz Yisrael and up to Tyre. In areas where the chilazon could be caught, it is known from various sources that the ancient Phoenicians who lived on the coast of what is today Lebanon were also involved in the production and sale of techelet. Archaeological discoveries on the coast of Eretz Yisrael confirm the existence of the dye industry, including the production of techelet and the purple dye known as argamon. Over time, the production of techelet dwindled due to both to the lower cost and greater availability of plant-derived alternatives and to various limitations that the Romans and Byzantines attached to the production of techelet. It continued to be the ritual finish during the Talmudic era, but by the era of the Gaon, techelet was no longer available and traditional techelet was lost. In recent generations, there has been an effort to identify the chilazon is the techelet to prepare dye for use in ritual fringes. The most widely accepted identification is the most to include a snail, and this identification is corroborated by archaeological evidence and chemical analysis. And there's a picture of wool dyed with secretion of the most chunis. Strings does not prevent fulfillment of the mitzvah ritual fringes with the white strings. Eina ma'akeves does not prevent fulfillment of the mitzvah. According to Rashi, this case of ritual fringes is not parallel to the case of the Mishnah with regard to phylacteries. In the case of phylacteries, one simply dons whichever one of the phylacteries he has, and he does not don the one he does not have. In the case of ritual fringes, one is always required to insert 4 strings into the garment. Consequently, if one does not have white or sky blue strings, one does not insert fewer strings, rather adds the number of strings of the color that he does have. Language of Rambam seems to indicate otherwise. The Rambam say for Hava consists of 140 contributions there and not 118. The Gemara 41b concludes that 4 strings are inserted into a hole in the corner of the garment, so the strings are doubled over to form 8 strings, with which the windings and knots are formed. The absence of the sky blue strings in the ritual fringe does not prevent the fulfillment of the mitzvah with the white strings. And so the white strings does not prevent the fulfillment of the mitzvah with the sky blue strings. Consequently, if one does not have sky blue strings, he fashions his ritual fringes using 4 white strings. Similarly, if he does not have white strings, he fashions his ritual fringes using 4 blue strings. And so too, if one had both white and sky blue strings, but the white strings broke off and only the sky blue strings remain, they are still fit. This is according to the Mishnah interpreted by Rava. And say for Havahachat 9.3. The absence of white strings does not prevent the fulfillment of the mitzvah with the sky blue strings. If one has only one, he wears it without the other. Absence of the phylacteries of the arm does not prevent fulfillment of the mitzvah with the phylacteries of the head. Despite the implicit comparison between phylacteries and ritual fringes in the Mishnah, there is a fundamental difference between them. The phylacteries of the head and the arm are done in 2 distinct acts, considered 2 independent mitzvot. Consequently, a separate blessing is decided for each. See 36b in the Rambam and Sefer Mitzvot. Mitzvot enumerates these obligations as 2 of the 630 mitzvot. By contrast, although the white and sky blue strings are not dependent on each other, they are actually 2 components of the same mitzvah, and one fulfills both components simultaneously. When he dons a garment and responds on the Rivash 137, absence of the phylacteries of the head does not prevent fulfillment of the mitzvah of the phylacteries of the arm, and absence of the phylacteries of the arm does not prevent fulfillment of the mitzvah of the phylacteries of the head, since 2 independent mitzvot. Therefore, if an individual has only one of the phylacteries, he wears the one that he has, and decides to be perfectly blessed in Rama Sefer Havahachat Tefillah Mezuzah Sefer Torah 26:1. An absence of the phylacteries of the head does not prevent fulfillment of the mitzvah of the phylacteries of the arm. If he has only one, he does it without the other. The Gemara suggests, let us say that the Mishnah is not in the contrary opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. As it's taught in the Bible, when the verse requires one to place white and sky blue strings upon the corners of his garment and then states, then you may look upon it, Numbers 15:39, it teaches that the lack of either one prevents the fulfillment of the mitzvah of the other. This is a statement of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, but Rabbi say the lack of one does not prevent the fulfillment of the mitzvah with the other. The Gemara inquires, what is the reading of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi? How does he derive his ruling from this verse? The Gemara explains, as it is written, and they shall put on the fringe of the corner a sky blue thread, Numbers 15:38. The fringe of the corner is a reference to strings that are the same type as the corner of the garment. Since garments are usually white, it's very referring to white strings. And it is written in the same verse, a sky blue thread. And the most one states in the following verse, referring to both sides of strings, and it shall be to you for a fringe that you may look upon it. Numbers 15:39. The singular, this teaches that one does not fulfill the obligation until both types are present together. The Gemara asks, and how do the rabbis hold that one can fulfill one obligation without the other understand this verse? The Gemara answers, they hold that the phrase "you may look upon it" indicates that one fulfills a mitzvah with each one individually. The Gemara concludes its initial suggestion. Shall we say that the Mishnah, which states that one can fulfill a mitzvah with either white or blue strings, even in the absence of the other, is not according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi? The Gemara responds, Rabbi Yehuda says that Rav said, you may say that the Mishnah is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and the ruling of the Mishnah is necessary only with regard to granting precedence. Rashi interprets this to mean that one is supposed to insert white strings into the hole in the garment before inserting the blue string. Yet if he inserts the blue string first, he still fulfills the mitzvah. Such challenges explanation on the grounds, and the order in which the strings were inserted is not evident when looking at the final product. He therefore interprets this Gemara stating that it is proper to begin the windings with the white string, and from some windings with the sky blue string. This also seems to be interpreted in the Rambam and Sefer Havahachat 1:7. After inserting the 4 strings into the corner of the garment, one takes a white string and wraps it once around the other strings. He then takes the sky blue string and wraps it around the other strings. As the Rambam Sefer Havahachat 1:7. As you perceive the blue strings, but the orders of it, one still fulfills the mitzvah. This is as is taught in the Bible. It's a mitzvah to insert the white strings into a garment before inserting the sky blue strings. But if one inserts the sky blue strings before the white strings, for them is an obligation but omitted the mitzvah. Then we'll ask, what does the Bible mean by this phrase, omitted the mitzvah? That's the end of the Yomad. Wish you a very good day and peace in Israel. All the best. Bye.